here we are together in this one place. And these days are the perfect days to explore the topic of refuge. From the moment we're born, it seems, we're immediately looking for something to rely on, something reliable, some kind of security. And we may find bits and pieces of reliable security with our parents as newborns. As we get older, I would propose we're still constantly looking for some kind of security and something to rely on in this unstable, unpredictable, unreliable human life. Maybe our refuges become more sophisticated as we get older. We might look for security and rely on maybe financial security or insurance policies or good health care. These days, maybe we're hoping to find security and reliance on a vaccine. All these things are worthwhile to use in our human life. But from the perspective of Buddha's teaching, all of these things are ultimately unreliable. Even if a vaccine is 94% effective, it will not save our life because we're going to die anyway. As we know, it might lengthen it a little bit. Basically, anything we can possibly think of and relate to in this experience we call human life is impermanent and therefore ultimately unreliable. And we might then figure that, well, then there isn't really a complete refuge, a refuge that's 100% reliable. Maybe 80% is good enough for many of us, but some of us might not be satisfied with 80%. We might at least wonder if there could be 100% reliable refuge, complete security that will never let us down. This type of refuge cannot be found in the realm of impermanent phenomena. Anything we can think of or see or hear or taste or touch. But of course, our tradition offers such a thing. 100% reliable refuge. The triple treasure, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. As I imagine you've been exploring these many weeks, this topic of refuge, some of this may sound familiar, but just to review, Buddha, the same root as flower bud. That's just the opening, the first opening and awakening into a complete blooming flower. It's called a bud, and Buddha is related to this awakening, the awakened one. I think the root Bud also can mean something like observing, aware. And Dharma has many, many meanings, but in terms of refuges, usually means something like truth or reality or law of what is. And Sangha, the community of practitioners of Buddha, Dharma. And Sharanam in Sanskrit means refuge and can mean return to, rely on, complete trust, recourse, reliance. And in Japanese, we translate refuge as kie, two Chinese characters. Ki means to return to, and a means to rely on. Return to and rely on Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And Dogen Zenji, our Japanese Soto Zen founder, kind of expresses this kie with some images. He says, ki, to return to, is like a child jumping into her mother's lap. That's the spirit of return to, diving into her mother's lap, the place of return, the place of security and ease, the place of love and protection. And then Dogen says the A, like rely on, is the way that loyal subjects rely on a virtuous and righteous leader, emperor, something like that. In the old days, sometimes they had virtuous, compassionate leaders of countries that one could totally rely on, again, for protection and support. Dogen expresses his understanding of refuge in various places, but thought it would be nice to look at a little more detail of how our lineage founder understands refuge in the three treasures. He actually talks about three types of triple treasure, three types of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha that we take refuge in. he teaches this in his Shobogenzo essay called Taking Refuge in the Three Treasures. And he also teaches it in an essay called Teaching and Conferring the Precepts. And Dogen talks about these three refuges slightly different in these two essays, but for the sake of simplicity and clarity, I'll try to kind of combine them into a version that makes most sense. They're very similar. Three types of triple treasure, three aspects of triple treasure, three dimensions of three refuges. And as we hear about this, we can consider how we might take refuge in the three treasures in these three different ways, or these three different types of three treasures. Really, that in this case, we could say there's 9 treasures. 3 times 3, we have 9 refuges, and we're taking refuge in all of them. Dogen is offering us this opportunity to take refuge, to something to rely on. So I could start with the first type of triple treasure Dogen calls the one-bodied triple treasure, or the single essence 3 treasures. 3 treasures, but they're one single essence, one body. And in this type of triple treasure, Buddha means verification of awakening. Buddha is awake, wakefulness. Then this wakefulness pervades all experiences of all beings. We hear in the Great Vehicle teachings. And yet, if we don't verify this wakefulness, this all-pervading aliveness, then in a way, it's not really refuge exactly. Another name, Dogen doesn't say this, but we might say another name for this single-bodied Buddha treasure is now. I take refuge in now. All-pervading now. Inconceivable now. Now that is not a tiny moment in between 2 other moments. It's like running along like a stream between past and future. Not that kind of now. This is the now that is always now, and it's actually not changing. If it were a now that was changing, then I would propose it wouldn't really be worthy of refuge. Maybe 80%, because it's still pretty good to have a now that's moving along between past and future. And it's a little more worthy of refuge, I think, than past or future. But if it's changing, it's another impermanent phenomena. But what about this now that is always now, has always been now and always will be now, without the slightest difference ever. Could there be such a now that we all share? And in fact, if it never changes and it's always been now, we not only share it with each other right now across this ungraspable Zoom screen, but we also share it with Dogen Zenji himself and Shakyamuni Buddha and the 7 ancient Buddhas. Because when we consider when they lived, we may conclude that they lived now. And they experienced this as now. And a lot of things have changed since the time of Dogen and the Buddha. But that's just like the scenery of now. The scenery is constantly changing. But now is simply now. So rather than now being like a moment that's moving along between past and present, we could see that now is unchanging, boundless, all-inclusive, inconceivable, all-pervading, eternal now. And what we call time, this flow of time, is moving through now, appears to move through now. What we call time is like the scenery moving through now. But it's just this one essence now. And we can verify it by opening to this possibility. And considering the implications of this possibility, that if there's always now, this now actually cannot be destroyed. Nothing can harm now. The scenery of now can definitely be destroyed and is being destroyed. It's being constructed and destroyed again and again, every moment. The scenery of now coming and going. And as individual people, that's the realm we live in, and we take care of it well. But I would propose that we can take care of it more and more skillfully if we remember that the scenery that's being constructed and destroyed by all these multiplicity of living beings, that scenery is just the kind of the display of now. And if we rely too much on the particulars of the display, which is what we tend to do, we'll feel at least a little bit insecure. But if we really return to and rely on the unchanging, indestructible now, I would say it's, dare I say, it's 100% reliable, this now. It can never let us down. It can never decay and erode like the scenery does. I would say it's truly worthy of refuge. It is the supreme security. Maybe what we feel most insecure about in the bottom of our hearts may be our own death. So ideally, if any refuge is 100% secure, it must withstand the test of our own death. And could it be that now could be reliable beyond the changing scenery of our individual life and death? So this is in the one single essence triple treasure. This is the meaning of Buddha. And Dharma, according to Dogen Zenji, is freedom from, we could say, duality, freedom from fixation, freedom from belief. And in this case, we could say anything other than Buddha. Duality in this case could be understood as thinking that there's something outside of or apart from Buddha, thinking that there's could possibly be truly anything other than now. Of course, there is the changing scenery, which includes past and future appearances, but that's not apart from now, right? That's the scenery that's flowing, seeming to flow through the unchanging now. It's not really apart from it or outside of it. How could the past and future possibly be outside of now from this understanding of the all-pervading, all-inclusive, eternally unchanging, ever-present now? So I could say Dharma is often understood like the teaching or the understanding of the truth, and we could say it's kind of like this Dharma as freedom from duality is kind of pointing to an aspect of Buddha. Maybe we could even say the most important aspect of Buddha is that it's free from the duality of anything outside of itself. But if we just take refuge in now, we might not notice this further dimension, this further aspect called Dharma, freedom from duality. You might say, yes, it's all well and good, I take refuge in now, but what about tomorrow? We have to remember that it's completely included within now. Otherwise, tomorrow is going to be a big problem if it's not now. And yesterday, we also often make a big problem of yesterday. And I think that's especially it's a problem when we understand it to be not now. So in this single body triple treasure, the Sangha treasure is, according to Dogen, something like according with reality, or harmony with reality, or the harmony or peaceful togetherness within reality. Is Sangha. We could also say it's the harmony or the accord between Buddha and Dharma. That if Buddha is all-inclusiveness of now and Dharma is its freedom from anything other than itself. It's a little bit like exploring the relational aspect of now. Dharma is now is in a way like non-relational because it's this one reality of now with nothing to relate to. In that way, it's non-relational. But Dharma, we could say, is kind of like the way that all these appearances of our life, including past and future, and including coming and going, and pleasant and unpleasant events, and all these things, that those are not separate from this now. They're included within it. You could say that that's a little bit relational now. And then Sangha is the way that all of this relationality is working in perfect harmony, even when it seems painful. So we might even say this is the bottom line understanding of refuge for Dogen, the single essence, triple treasure. This is our true reliance, truly worthy of placing our security in this Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. But this is just one of the three types of triple treasure. Now, we could say based on this reliance on the single body triple treasure of now and its non-duality and its harmonious functioning, then the second type of triple treasure is called by Dogen the transformational triple treasure. And I think this is related to another term Dogen uses, is the manifested triple treasure. And in this case, this is a little bit more like what many people might think of when they first hear of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. This transformation of triple treasure is that Buddha is Shakyamuni Buddha, the person who lived in India around 500 years before Christ and walked on this planet now. That's the Buddha, transformational Buddha. And transformational Dharma is Shakyamuni Buddha's turning the Dharma wheel in the deer park at Isipatana near Varanasi. The Buddha set in motion the wheel of Dharma, of the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path, and the Middle Way. And then as people began to understand that, the Buddha ascended Vulture Peak in Rajagriha, and again turned the Dharma wheel of Prajna Paramita, the total ungraspability of all appearances. And as people started opening to that radical teaching, then the Buddha in many places for a third time turned the wheel of Dharma, of non-duality, that all appearances are projections of mind and not apart from mind. And the Buddha kept turning this wheel of Dharma ceaselessly, and it's being turned right now. Because if Shakyamuni Buddha had verified awakening for himself but hadn't turned the wheel of Dharma, then we individual appearances of sentient beings would be lost in the scenery, the miserable scenery. So this Dharma wheel needs to be turned. And then the Sangha in this transformational triple treasure is, again, it's kind of going along with this historical story. Dogen says it's those 5 monks who first practiced with Shakyamuni Buddha in the deer park. His old buddies who were liked to practice meditation in the forest together. And excellent yogis who did a lot of meditation, but the Dharma wheel hadn't been completely turned in this world system at that time. So they didn't have any like 100% refuge. So they kept meditating and looking for the 100% refuge. But it wasn't until their old friend Siddhartha became Shakyamuni Buddha and returned to find them in the deer park and turn the wheel of Dharma. And then one by one, these 5 yogis got it. They got the Buddha's teaching because the Dharma wheel was being turned. It's interesting that in this human realm, generally the way the Dharma wheel is turned is through words. There's other ways too, but I think that was one of Shakyamuni Buddha's discoveries, is that we can do this thing in words. Words don't reach it, and yet they seem to point as close as we can. Maybe it was also the Buddha's presence mixed with his words that awakened these 5 monks in the deer park. Or we could say, I think that's what Dogen is saying, that's the manifested Sangha, and of course, many other practitioners realizing the Buddha's teachings now would also be included in Sangha. But that's the beginning of the story. It's Shakyamuni Buddha, his turning the wheel of Dharma, and then many other people besides these first 5 awakened to his teachings, but that was the beginning. It's even said that that turning the wheel of Dharma was not, as I understand it, is not exactly just this first teaching of the 4 Noble Truths and the middle way, but it's when Kondinya, the monk Kondinya, understood, and his Dharma eye first opened, and he said, "I understand." And the Shakyamuni Buddha said, "Kondanya understands." And he kind of renamed him Ajñata Kondinya, which means something like Kondanya who understands. He heard the wheel of Dharma, and when he opened to the supreme refuge at that time, that's really when the Dharma wheel first turned. It wasn't exactly the words coming out of the Buddha's mouth. It was when they entered Kondanya's ears and his mind turned, that the Dharma wheel was first turned. So that's the manifested or the transformational triple treasure. And we take refuge, of course. We take refuge in Shakyamuni Buddha. We take refuge in his turning the Dharma wheel, and we take refuge in those from the very beginning up to the endless end who realize the Buddha's Dharma. We take refuge in that Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And then finally, there's the third type of triple treasure, is the abiding and maintaining triple treasure. Abiding and maintaining. Kind of implying that, well, this was a long time ago, conventionally speaking, that Shakyamuni Buddha first turned the wheel of Dharma and Ajñata Kondinya heard it. So it has to be like maintained and abiding in this ongoing way. So Dogen defines the abiding and maintaining triple treasure like this, that Buddha, in this case, is painted images and carved statues of Buddha and Bodhisattvas. That might be kind of surprising. Really? I thought we were talking about vast, inconceivable, indestructible now, and now we're talking about these paintings and statues. And Dogen's saying we take refuge in them. That's a kind of Buddha that we take refuge in. So Dharma in this abiding and maintaining triple treasure is the sutras spoken by the Buddha that were written down and translated into English and sit on the bookshelf. I see some sutras behind some people on the screen. They're just books, right? They're just they're leaves of paper with black printing ink on them. We take refuge in those books. I think it's what Dogen is saying. Those are the kind of like a maintenance, a maintaining of Dharma is the way that it gets printed and distributed and read. It has liberating power. It's amazing. Again, it's like the Dharma comes in these words. And Sangha, treasure, in this abiding and maintaining triple treasure, Dogen says is wearing the robe and practicing the precepts and this kind of thing. So again, the robe is just this piece of cloth, and we're devotedly into like sewing them. I see lots of them, rakusus and ocases, and we sew them in the old style, and then we can even wear it. It's not that like functional. It doesn't really like keep the cold out so much, although a little bit it does. That's actually quite cool here in Crestone these days, down the teens. And Buddha's robe is quite warm. But again, you could say, isn't that just like a symbol, or just like these paintings and statues and books and robes? We really were taking refuge in that. That's the Sangha, is like wearing this robe like Buddha wore and following the precepts. That might be a little easier to understand as Sangha. But yes, we take refuge in that maintaining of Sangha, maintaining of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We might say it's symbolic, but I wouldn't say it's exactly symbolic. If it's just symbolic, I don't know if it would be worthy of refuge. I would understand it's more like it's just like Shakyamuni Buddha is a so-called manifestation of the verification of now. These abiding and maintaining types of triple treasure, we could also say are like manifestations. So like an image a painted image of a Buddha is actually like an expression of now. It's a manifestation of now, right? And it's based on, if there's some connection with this particular type of painting of Buddha to Shakyamuni Buddha, and Shakyamuni Buddha, there's a particular type of connection to the verification of the all-pervading indestructibility of now. You could say the painting reminds us, but even that may be a little bit too mundane a way to say it. It's true, but what if we really see that everything in the scenery that's passing through now is all a manifestation of now, but some aspects of the scenery are like maybe more directly expressing the single essence of now. And some people might feel like they see a nicely artistically created image of Buddha, and they when they see it, they immediately return to and rely on now. We might not, especially if we get used to seeing the same old paintings and statues, but there is that potential. I think in this case, artists are also manifestations of now, have maybe a big responsibility to create images that most directly remind us that they are now and we are now. And books, sutra books, I think are really also designed to do that. That the paintings and the statues and the sutra books and the sewn rakusus and following the precepts are all, I think that's what they're designed for, to remind us, you could say, that they are now and we are now. Therefore, they're worthy of refuge. We could say, aren't they just part of the passing scenery? In a way, they are, that the paintings will not last forever, and the statues will not last forever, and the books will not last forever. But the essence of them, what those statues and books and robes really are in their actual reality, they are nothing other than now. Are they not? Now expressing itself as paintings and statues and books and robes. So you could say they remind us of now, but actually in their true nature, what they really are. You could even say what they're really made of. We think the statue is made of wood or bronze. It appears like that, but what it's really made of is now. That's all it is. It's a particular expression of now. So there, in that way, even the old wooden statues, totally worthy of refuge. Its true nature is indestructible. Its temporary expression is impermanent, but its true nature is indestructible. I think it's interesting that in this maintaining triple treasure, the Sangha treasure, we usually think of it as like, well, that's our, like, all of us, all these people who are practicing, but it's funny that Dogen doesn't talk about it here as people. He talks about it as these activities. Sangha is the activity of wearing the robe and keeping the precepts, having this beautiful harmonious conduct where we live in the world in a harmless and beneficial way. The conduct is actually the Sangha, interestingly. And again, if you think of, well, what kind of Sangha can we rely on like 100%? Because people are actually impermanent and actually not completely reliable. Even great teachers are not that reliable and really worthy of 100% secure reliance and refuge. So one time my teacher, Tenshin Roshi, when asked, what is Sangha, said something like, Sangha is those who encourage us to practice. Those, meaning people, but also could be statues or books, or whatever, anything, events, anything I think could encourage us, and not just to practice, but encourage us to verify wakefulness of now. So I thought that really kind of stuck with me as a beautiful and unusual definition of Sangha, because in this case, you could say that it's not like certain people who are like part of the Zen institution or something. In this case, the Sangha, it could anybody who encourages us to remember and verify now. At the moment that they're encouraging us, they're Sangha. And it could be that we could widen our Sangha to include everybody and everything and every event. In other words, at the time that we're remembering to verify now, anything that's reminding us to do that is at that time Sangha. And then another time somebody might be really kind of mean to us. I mean, I think the possibilities for this kind of Sangha. Somebody might like say something nasty to us. And usually we would say, well, they're not Sangha, they're not supporting my practice at that point. But actually, maybe that nasty remark could actually like wake us out of some complacency and be like, we feel our own resistance and anger back at them. And then we remember, oh, this is a chance for practice. That person who kind of triggered my anger, they're helping me remember this hard to remember harmony that's pervading now, the way we're all interdependent with each other. And they're reminding me that, so therefore they are Sangha. They're encouraging my practice almost in a negative way, but they're encouraging it. So I think this is an interesting way to explore Sangha. Any body or anything that encourages or reminds us to verify Buddha. So that's 3 types of triple treasure according to Dogen. We can take refuge in all of them. We can rely on them, and I think it's probably obvious that the reason we would want to rely on Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, is that it is the way of peace and ease and joy for ourselves and others, and love and compassion and benefit, all kinds of inconceivable ways all flow forth from this refuge. We could even say that looking at refuge in this way is the entire practice. There's no other practice we need to do other than take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. It includes every possible beneficial practice in the Buddha way. So how about we close the talk with a chant, and then we can have some dialogue. Dedicate the merit of our Sangha gathering here today to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. May they continue to transform, manifest, and be maintained for the benefit of all beings eternally. May our intention equally extend to every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it.
Thank you so much, Kokyo. We have time for some questions, and it's easiest for me, since we're spread out over a couple of screens, if people go down to the participants little icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and use the raised blue hand, and that way I can see without having to keep swiping back and forth and miss people or skip people inadvertently. Um, but if that doesn't work for you, you could raise your actual hand, and I'll try to keep track of the questioners. So, would anyone like to ask a question or make a comment or discuss? I see Rich's blue hand. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Rich.
Thank you, Kokyo Henkel. Thank you very much. That was a great talk. I was talking to someone recently. We were looking at this book by Dainin Katagiri and reading the first part of it, and he said something like he says daily routine is a huge, expansive continuation of routine activities, getting up in the morning, having breakfast, going to work, coming home, going to bed. Daily routine shows us how to live in this huge expanse of time beyond any idea we may have of time. This is everyday life. A daily routine is very important for us. It can let us be free from time. And
that sounds a lot like the abiding and maintaining triple treasure that's playing out in the midst of unchanging, inconceivable, what he calls time, what I would call now.
right, yeah, I was struck by this particular passage, and I was thinking about how it seems to me that oftentimes when we hear the word real, what is real in Buddhist texts, what they mean is what's happening right now, as opposed to what happened in the past or what's happening in the future. And that's sort of the things that we're pointing to in our zazen. Is that correct? This idea of the real is the now.
I would edit that a little bit and to say that what is real is now, but then the things that are happening, even if they're happening in the present moment, are still kind of like expressions of now, but now itself, which is not something that's happening right now, it is unchanging realm. That's what's truly real, and anything that's temporary, even if it's in the present, is not quite as real as that which doesn't change.
Thank you.
But as I said, talking about these manifested triple treasure, you could say the manifestations that are changing and temporary in their true nature, they are also, you could say, real, because their true nature is the unchanging now. That's what their essence, the essence of all changing things, is nothing other than now. They're just expressions of now. So in their true essence, even temporary things have that real nature.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kokyo. I have a question for you.
Yes.
You've heard this question before. My question, and sorry, I didn't raise my blue hand because I actually don't have one as the host.
What's the sound of one blue hand?
Endlessness. So my question, Kokyo, is in regard to the all-inclusiveness, which you've mentioned several times, is includes beneficial
Includes what?
includes beneficial actions and actions
Yes.
conducive to awakening.
Yes.
And the all-inclusiveness, I would say, has to include despair and terror and fear and
Yes.
hurt also as manifestations of this now.
Yes.
Um,
There's nothing that's not included. Yeah.
yes. So how does that, when people hear that, when I hear that, um,
And we
the
think it all. We think then if harm and non-harm are equally manifestations, then why bother practicing non-harm like that?
not so much why because of consequences, but yeah, I would say in terms of taking refuge or finding refuge, how
Mhm.
does one find refuge in the manifestation of things that are um, not conducive to awakening?
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a tricky one because conventionally speaking, then we practice precepts as best we can and to maintain the Sangha treasure ourselves. And then we see things that don't seem to be in accord with that. But it seems to me that the more we can open to how all of this, how all the harmful events are also ultimately speaking manifestations of this all-inclusive now, the more we keep remembering that true nature of all events and things and appearances, um, then we ourselves who are doing that practice of contemplating in that way, we become more and more open to everything, and then so then our conduct becomes more and more loving because we realize that all of this is included, and including our own pain, including our own pain at um, seeing all these beings that are not verifying Buddha's awakening and therefore hurting each other in all kinds of painful ways. We personally feel pain at that, but we could say the refuge is in this, and that all of this, the harmful violence and the painful feeling in ourselves and others, all of that is happening within this big space of now. And the more we can take refuge in that, then there's some actual like comfort and some security, some relief in that way. Are very that we're open. It doesn't eliminate our pain, but when we open to that, the nature of our pain is this all-inclusive now, that it is like completely one with Shakyamuni Buddha's great awakening. Our pain is one with that. Then it's a different kind of pain. Not that it goes away, but it's like it's almost like it's like a Buddha pain.
Truly inconceivable. Thank you.
I see Anne is waving her hand. I put my blue hand up, but I'm going to defer to Anne. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm co-hosting, so I don't have a blue hand. So thank you, Toro. And Kokyo, thank you so much for your talk. I really appreciate you being here, and it was wonderful to see you and hear you talk about Dogen. And I was just curious if Dogen talked about here and space and where we are, because there seems to be a focus on time and now? So that's my question.
Yes, good one. And actually, when in Dogen's definition of these three types of triple treasure, he doesn't use the word now. That was my commentary on Dogen, and you're exactly right that now is a kind of the ultimate temporal dimension, and here is the ultimate spatial dimension. And yes, we could even say that if we understand now in this way that we've been talking about now today, that it's not like it's not a moment between two other moments. It's not a flowing, changing now. It's an unchanging now. And if we define here as not a place, a tiny place between two other places, but all pervading here, that includes all locations, and also never changes. Here is always here, wherever we are, wherever anyone ever is always here. In that way, here and now, I would say, meet exactly as the one inconceivable suchness. And when we start to approach it, it's like time now is a temporal dimension, and here is a spatial dimension. But at the full extent and meaning of both now and here, I would say they're identical. They lose their temporal and spatial quality in the full extent of them. That they're actually like two names for the same reality, now and here. So, and I think you're exactly right that here is just as valid as now to express reality, unchanging, unmoving, unlocated, timeless, dimensionless reality. And of course, if you stick the two words that close together, now and here, stick them closer and closer together, they become nowhere.
Pat's next.
Thank you for your talk, Kokyo. Well, you introduced an interesting term when you were answering Mako's question, and I'd love to hear more about it. And that was Buddha pain.
Buddha pain. Yeah. If we can understand this subtle point that everything that's happening, all experience, it's another name for what's happening, is happening now, within now, a manifestation of now. That might be a little harder to understand. An expression of now, the display of now is all experience is in its essence nothing other than transformations of now. If we can understand that, then we can see all experiences in their true nature are now, which today I was saying is a kind of synonym for Buddha. Now is another name for Buddha. So in that way, any experience, it doesn't matter so much the content of the experience, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. I mean, of course, these things matter to us as humans, but in terms of the true nature of the experience of pleasant or unpleasant, pain or pleasure, in their essence, they're identical. Pleasure and pain are identical in their essence, which we call now. And therefore, we could call it to include the particular temporary expression, we can say pain, and to include the unchanging essence, we can say Buddha, and then we'll put them together and call it Buddha pain. And you could say, well, is this just, we're just playing around with words. What's the, we have our life to live here. But I would say, no, this is a teaching that could be really help us, because we all experience pain. So when there's pain, this is kind of like a Zen approach to, I'm kind of sort of jumping here to the ultimate too. I think really a maybe more practical way to say it is when there's pain first, we just don't resist it. And we really are willing to really feel it. I think we've all heard this kind of thing around Zen centers. We don't try to escape from it. We just fully accept it, because from this point of view, if we're trying to escape it and get rid of it, then we're making it into something other than Buddha pain. We're like saying what's really real is the pain, the painful feeling itself. And now we've kind of, if we're trying to get rid of it, that's what we're doing. So you could say, from this way we're talking today, you could say the reason we don't want to get rid of it is because, not so much because it'll cause more pain, but because it's like out of accord with reality. We're giving it too much. If we're trying to get rid of it, we're giving it too much reality that it doesn't have. So first we're like, okay, I'm just going to not do anything about it. I'm just going to be here with this pain. And when we can settle with it for a while, then we can start asking it who it is, what it is. I think, I didn't even mention that before, but of course, that's an essential step. Before asking pain what it is, we have to really be willing to be with it. If we jump to like pain and like, who are you? We have a little bit of an agenda usually to like, well, we were asking it because we were trying to get rid of it. Like, I don't need to get rid of you because you're just an experience. And I'm really curious about what experience is. So that's to get to be able to explore it, we have to be kind of settled in it. If we're trying to get away from it, that's kind of the interesting thing. It seems like we're trying to get away from any experience or tightly grasp any experience. That kind of prevents our exploration of it, seems to me. So that's kind of a preliminary step. It's like first, we're not trying to get rid of it or grasp it, or just be with it. And of course, Zazen is the best practice for just sitting with whatever we're experiencing. And sometimes we think that that's all there is to Zazen, is just sitting in our experience and being with it. And sometimes maybe that's all we can do and have the energy for it. That's already excellent. But there are these further dimensions of Zazen where once we're sitting with it, then we can start asking it questions.
Thank you.
Kokyo, I think I have a question,
Yes.
but it's hard to frame. So anytime I hear about something in Buddhism that is unchanging and eternal, I immediately think, how is that possible? Everything changes. But this talk really helped me understand better what that's about. But I do have a question about the scenery and about, I think you used the word at some point, something about skillfulness. So is relating skillfully to the scenery practicing compassion? And I like the idea of scenery as a, included in now, included in what you're calling now. It's not apart from it. It's not separate from it. So that makes me feel less like, oh, you're just the scenery. you know, you meaning me and everything else. But I think you're getting at it when you're responding to people's questions about pain and suffering and harm. But could you say something specifically about compassion?
Yeah, well, and first of all, I appreciate your remark about we 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 hear so often in Dharma teachings about how everything is impermanent. There's no exceptions. Everything is destructible and impermanent, and that is it. That is a central teaching of the Buddha. So all conditioned phenomena, experiences, things, events, appearances, they're all impermanent. So if we start talking in this way about this indestructible, unchanging, eternal reality, then we just have to make sure that we're not talking about a thing, one of those things. The Buddha's language is all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. So we have to understand that this now that we're speaking of is not a conditioned phenomena. It's unconditioned, and emptiness fits into this category too. Emptiness is not a conditioned phenomena. So it's okay to talk that way, but we're so used to only relating to conditioned phenomena that we can start putting now into that category, consciously or unconsciously. And so I think that the danger that we tend to put anything that has a name into this category of some sort of thing, that's why sometimes in Buddhist tradition, that just say everything is impermanent. They just don't talk about the unchanging, eternal, because it has that danger of like, we'll start putting it into the thing category. But as long as we don't do that, then we can, we're allowed to talk about it. And especially when we're talking about refuge and the ultimate refuge, the 100% refuge, I think we need to almost start talking that way, because it's nothing impermanent is worthy of refuge. And if that's all there is, then there is no refuge. So, and then this issue of, the scenery, we should have compassion for the scenery of our life, because that's our life. And I think you mentioned something like we can really have compassion for it and take care of it well, because its reality, you could say that the way the scenery appears is not really real the way it appears to us, but it has a reality. You could say the scenery has a reality, and that reality is now, because that's like where the scenery is happening. The scenery is flowing through now, and therefore it's not something other than now. So you could say all kinds of conventional appearances and the nitty-gritty of our life, we might feel like, well, let's just forget about that and just be here now and just ignore that stuff. We don't even have to have compassion for it, because it's really now. From this non-dual perspective, it is now. There's nothing separate from now. And if we start to separate out the changing scenery from the unchanging now, then we might want to just respect and take care of the unchanging now. So you see that the essence of the scenery, the true nature of the scenery, is the inconceivable, unchanging now. And by understanding that more and more deeply, I think that may help us take care of the particular scenery more in a more compassionate way, which is, I think, one way of understanding why, like in the Zen tradition, we say like pick up the teacup with two hands, and like every little, like if you find a chopstick in the mud, you should clean it off and use it, because it's a precious manifestation of now, rather than like, it's just some garbage, throw it out. So that's compassion for chopsticks in the mud. But of course, people are even more important. We are all expressions of now, and our true nature is the same true nature as Shakyamuni Buddha. I mean, literally, right? From this point of view of Shakyamuni Buddha's body and mind are right now. You could say we're right now, but are right now, because there's no other now. And so if we disrespect any sentient beings, no matter how deluded or obnoxious they are, we're actually disrespecting Shakyamuni Buddha. So we share the same reality. So I think this shared reality of now is, we could say, is the basis for true compassion and care and respect. Yeah, often in Buddhist tradition, they say, well, this kind of thing of like verifying the reality of Buddha now would come after like a long time of like cleaning up our act and getting our compassion, a lot of compassion and kindness to everyone first, to kind of generate the merit needed to verify Buddha. But often in Zen tradition, these things are kind of reversed. It's kind of this emphasis on first verify the reality of now, and then from that verification, naturally, kindness and compassion and so forth. It's a little bit like, it takes more trust, I think. But maybe in reality, how it actually works is both. We need a lot of merit and virtue in order to open completely to now. And then after we open to now, then our kindness and compassion can really be even wider. So it's kind of like circular. It's not really that there's any one part comes first and the next later in the end.
Thank you. I found myself listening with joy to what you were saying. So that's usually a verification for me.
Wonderful. Hallelujah.
Svaha.
Ya is another name for now.
I see David. Maybe that will be our last question.
Thank you. Thank you for this great talk. It's, I will tell you that thinking about now in the way that you addressed it brought me back a little bit to astronomy class in college, when we talked a lot about space and time. And I've always enjoyed that connection between Buddhism and Zen and kind of physics. But what I wanted to ask you is actually about the body and now, and how I bring myself to now is through recognizing that this body is here now. And my question is that effective?
I think, yeah, entering here now through this temporary manifestation we call the body is quite effective. And it may be that the main reason that is so is because what often obscures here and now for us is conceptual thinking, too much like discursive conceptual thinking. it's like it just like adds these layers of complication over this total simplicity we call here and now. And the body is a little bit more in the direction of the simplicity of here and now. It's less conceptual. It's a more direct experience. The sensations of the body, and also just like seeing form and hearing sound is like a little more direct access point to here and now, it seems, than a lot of conceptual thinking can almost like it just adds layers. So I think that's what I would say is the kind of the main reason why there's this emphasis in Zen on posture and breath and being with the body, is like it settles our conceptual thinking mind. And then maybe when we're settled, like I mentioned earlier, then there is this thing about words, right? The Dharma comes through words, and we take refuge in those giant bookshelves behind some of these screens here, because it does come in that way too. So I think the combination of grounded in bodily experience, the five senses just open without adding anything, and that, oh, this is actually, there's this dimension of here and now that I kind of forgot until I settled into this body. And then once we're settled into the body like that, then maybe sometimes we pull a book off the shelf and it says like, wait a minute, did you forget some detail in here? Maybe it points out something we overlooked.
Keep going.